start, I do want to say the one thing I finally realized after all these years of Francis Lawrence and the Hunger Games like series, he's really, really good at visualizing inner monologues. Like I tried to figure out what is he really good at, like what's his thing. He's really good at visualizing what they're trying to say, the characters say internally. And by the way, if you haven't seen the movie yet, there will be spoilers.
Are you coming to the tree?
So hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name's Bernadette. I talk about all things fashion and film and a bunch of other stuff. I just posted a bunch of Halloween content because Halloween just passed. If you want to check those out, have a look. I'll leave them somewhere down below. So tell by the title of this video, we're talking about the new Hunger Games movie that just came out. I have just come back from the cinemas. I just finished watching it and I have a lot to go through. So let's go. By the first part of the movie, I really liked how they did the first part of the film. It was not like the same as the book, which I actually didn't mind. He talks about that part of the story like a bit later on. So it's still the first chapter, like beginning of the novel, but it's not like the first thing that you read. So I really liked how they kind of start off with the dark days and you kind of see that he was like a child when he experienced that. So you can kind of see how the trauma of that like time period still stuck with President Snow. I guess I really liked how they captured parts of the book into the movie. Like I could see, sorry, it's so hot today. I could definitely see like, it was very close to the book. It was very, very, very close to the novel, which I really enjoyed. And just the costumes, the clothes, and Clement, I liked her character too. She was exactly how I pictured her. It was really, really good. And Arachne as well, like her scene. I totally forgot about that part. I read the book when it first came out, so I kind of had to read quickly, like audiobook style, refresh the way that I read the book. I forgot about that part of the zoo where she dies from the her tribute. So it was like, oh yeah, like it happens so quickly. It's kind of like a like you jump, and that part, like when they were doing the interviews and they were like kind of chained to the small table, they had to communicate with their tribute. I think he was from not District 11, District 7, I think, or something. And he has the chains at the tribute. He goes like I actually jumped in the cinema, like, and like I knew it was coming. Like I read that part, but I just forgot about it. So it was really good, like how they did that, I guess. To like, I guess him and his class and how he's kind of pretending to fit in, like status-wise. I really like how they did that. That was really cool. I pictured the room totally different when they're introducing themselves and the classroom for when they're studying. I pictured it kind of like, I mean, it's kind of like a lecture hall, but in like a miniature kind of way. I pictured it more like a uni lecture where you've got the person at the bottom and the students panned out throughout the top. That's kind of how I pictured it in my head, but like obviously it was still pretty close. Everyone just pictures it a bit differently. So I guess it's up to interpretation. First hour is like a part one. Second one, he divides like each hour. It's like part 2 is 1 hour. And then part 3 is like a whole other hour. So I like how they split into 3 even parts. So that way everything gets covered. Well, most of it anyways. And you can kind of see the like, I've also pictured the arena a little bit differently. I was picturing it more like, you know how we have stadiums nowadays. I pictured it like a really old, like rundown stadium, or even like a Colosseum type thing in Rome, like the gladiators type of style, like just really rundown version of it. So yeah, it was really like, it was actually a lot more like sad, I guess, watching like the Hunger Games, because it like, especially how the games were being run and everything. They're trying to just start to put on a show, so it's not as orchestrated and put together as you see in the previous Hunger Games series. So everything feels a bit more raw and like brutal, and like just the character deaths and like the tribute. I forgot what number he's, I think from 7, I think it was, where he kind of takes the flag, really like lays them down. I really admired how they kept true to that in the book. Like all the Hunger Games, the actual Hunger Games was like very true to the book. So this movie is still very true to the book, so even if you haven't seen it, it still makes sense. A lot of the aspects really reminded me of Catching Fire in an odd way, like the way it was shot, the way that it's true to the novel, the way that certain angles and scenes were reminded me a lot of Catching Fire, which I get she's saying, like Susan Collins said, it reminds me of Catching Fire, and I can see it, like I totally get like the pace of it too, how it doesn't seem so like, I don't know, like the style of it is very like particular to Catching Fire, if that makes sense. I really, really did enjoy it. Miss Lucy, she was really good, Rachel. Like, I totally get it. She wasn't exactly how I pictured in my head. Same with oh, what's his name? Janus, I think his name was. Same with Janus. I didn't picture them in that kind of like style, but like I get why they chose Rachel. Like, she is exactly how she would sound, how she would act, how her mannerisms and character would be like. So I get it. And I was so worried about how they'll portray the songs. I was like, please go in that particular folk direction. And I'm really glad they did. Like, her voice is beautiful. The way they captured each song, each scene, it didn't feel tacky or forced. It did feel very like you're watching a story. So I was really happy with how they highlighted that. I went there totally blind, by the way. The only thing I saw was trailers. That's it. Didn't hear any songs. Didn't even listen to Olivia Rodrigo's song for it yet. I listened to it at the end of the film. It's actually really good. I'm really happy about that, which is awesome. I love how they portrayed the Covey, because that's exactly how I picture them, kind of like 70s hippie nomads who just kind of go around and perform as a living. So they actually captured that really well, which was awesome. Inside to the Capitol, and also, oh my God, Viola Davis as Dr. Gall. Yeah, exactly how I pictured her. The way she talks, the way she mimics, like her view of the games as this like it's just a project for her. Like, she doesn't really see it as like kids' lives. It's basically her as like trying to make a pinpoint. It's so like you can really see how it's just one side pitting against each other, and how like it's never ending. And you can see how when Katniss comes into the picture, everything finally just kind of like resets itself. So it's really interesting how they did that. References to the future film, like this must be like a prequel. So future like references to the actual Hunger Games series was really cool. I did notice that the hanging tree, obviously we finally get to see the hanging tree in the film because we hear about it in the novels a lot, was really, really devastating. That scene with Sejanus, you know what I'm talking about, was really, really sad. I actually was like gonna cry almost. I was like, that's really gut-wrenching. And how the mockingbirds were just mimicking like that. Like, I get it. Like, that's really, and you can see how President Snow kind of uses those pieces from his life, like those experiences, as like taunting games in the Hunger Games later on in the future to like Katniss and Peter and stuff. So you can see how he kind of uses his own experience that way, especially with the Mockingjays at the end. I could see that for Catching Fire, how they use that same scene for Katniss and Finnick and stuff. You know what I'm talking about. How like he was so, if he just pushed the whole status and power aside, he could have had that life. I found it funny how like they could easily just leave District 12, but they still choose to go back. Like, I would totally headed out to the north for sure. Also, the cabin that they go to in the woods, in the lake, I pretty sure I remember in Hunger Games, one of the books, I think Mockingjay Part 1 or Catching Fire, Katniss actually tries to escape with a bunch of people. I remember she like tries to lead them out or something like that. And they mentioned a cabin in the woods that her dad took her to. And I thought, oh my God, is that the same cabin? But obviously in the Hunger Games, it's more like she said, it's like a rundown cabin. And her dad used to take her out there. And I was like, oh my God, is that the same cabin that Lucy goes to and the Covey goes to? So it all really linked together like a lot. It was really cool to see. And it makes sense now, like down the track. When you visually see it, just like explains so much. And track, you see this girl Katniss with all these references back to Lucy, which is like really, yeah, it's really cool how they did that. One part of the book I was confused about is when she's singing, Lucy's singing, I think, which apparently is where the hob is, which I didn't even like put two and two together until like a friend mentioned it to me. Like, that's where they have the hob in present time Hunger Games. I was like, oh my God, that's so true. But there's that scene where she's singing and they have that like scene, I don't want to spoil too much, the scene at the back room with like Sejanus and then Lucy and Snow and the other guy and the mayor's daughter. I was so confused reading that part in the book just because like so much stuff was happening, and then to actually visually see it, it explained so much. And I was like, oh, that makes sense why like the weapons was such a big deal, and like he obviously betrayed him by sending off like the bird tape. And then also the other guy too kind of didn't say anything. He just kind of kept quiet. So that actually, like visually seeing that actually explained so much for me. And that kind of made more sense. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. Yeah, so I like how they didn't try to like put a conclusion for Lucy. I like how they just kept it like she disappears. And I didn't realize as well until watching it that that song she sings to Snow on the lake, and he asks what happens to the girl, and she says she likes to think that she just flies away. I realized that that's kind of like a foreshadowing for what happens to Lucy at the end with Snow. Like, you don't know what happens to her. She kind of just like disappears. I like to think that she kind of just took up north somewhere and settled out there, or she ended up in District 13 somehow. So like in the future, maybe when Katniss is underground and she's hiding in District 13, like Lucy's old and grey and she's just hiding there too somewhere. Like, I like to think that their timelines kind of intersect in that situation. But yeah, overall, it was just like, it was moments where you're like, oh my God, or you're like, oh my God, like that's horrible. Oh my God, like it's actually cool to visually see it that way. Like, yeah, it definitely was like a lot to sink in. Definitely something I'd have to think. It did stick with me for a while afterwards. I was like, oh wow, okay. Like, I've kind of progressed with the characters myself. So it's just kind of just sitting there like, whoa. Very full circle moment, considering that I also like watched as a teenager the first Hunger Games movie. And now see this one come out a little bit older, and it's more about like the prequel before everything happened. So it just felt very, and I was seeing my friends again at the same time. So it just felt very, very full circle moment. So did the ending. This is not a romance story, definitely not. It's a story about how a boy becomes a villain and how like his choices and decisions might kind of make him the man he is, and how he ends up being the way he is. I really hope we do get a book about Haymitch and the beginning of the Hunger Games, like the very first, like what happens in the dark days, because there's still so much like surrounding it. Also, the one thing I really wish she talked about was why in the future, I think they hint it towards the end a little bit. Like, she says that you ended up just like your dad, like Tigris says to Snow, because in the future, like he punishes her and like literally cosmetically makes her look like a tiger. So it makes me think like there's a huge chunk missing there between them two. Like, you don't know what happens, like why he punishes her like that, considering how close they are and how close they were. So, and Suzanne Collins doesn't mention it in the book either. So that's a very like little loophole I have. Why does President Snow punish Tigris in the future? What happens between them two? I think it's just like an indifference of like views, because you can kind of see that throughout the films, and maybe it just escalates in the future. But that's also like questions that I have, you know. I wish like Highbottom was a little bit more like Highbottom, you know what I mean? Like, he's supposed to be on Wolfling a lot, but he seemed very chill, considering the first introduction of him in the book as well. He's very not himself, so I thought that would be portrayed a bit more, and it wasn't really. You just kind of see him like taking the Wolfling, but like the way he slurs, like you don't really hear much of it. So that was the only little fickle thing, but like everything else was really good. All the actors did a good job. The pace was good. The music was good. I like how they split it up. The actors were really good. The songs were good. The costumes were good. Oh my God, I love the costumes. Dr. Gore's outfit, I didn't realize until she was like walking away from Snow, like after the whole scene with like Clemens with the snakes. Her dress looks like blood. Like the red and then the white. I was like, and the red gloves, I didn't see it until like she was walking out. And I was like, oh my God, it does. Shocking. There was a lot to happen. It's like a 3-hour movie, so it is really long, but it is worth it, and it definitely is something that like sits with you for a while. And it just made me think like also how Highbottom, like it was his dad's idea. Like Snow's dad took the idea and ran with it, and it was Highbottom's idea just as a joke, and he thought, okay, finally it would stop, and then in comes the sun and just runs with the idea. And obviously ends up being for like 74 years plus the Quarter Quell, so 75. So it just like, yeah, it kind of scares you a little bit, because it's like it kind of makes you think what kind of character President Snow is, who takes somebody else's idea and runs with it, actually happens in today's world. And that's the thing with Suzanne Collins' writing, is that her stuff isn't that far from fiction. Like when he did at the end President Snow, and you see him walk towards the statue, and I just think that's a bit like, whoa, it kind of hits you, because there are characters out there like that in the real world, and like this kind of stuff could possibly happen one day. So it's not that far from reality, and Suzanne Collins is really good at capturing that. So yeah, it really sat with me afterwards. It was maybe a little bit like, oh my God, you know, there are people like that already who do that. So it's just makes you sit and think about yourself and the world that you're in. So yeah. Overall, it's a really good film. Definitely would watch it. You have to have the patience. It's very long, so make sure you have snacks. Make sure you go to the bathroom beforehand. But it's not something that's boring. Like the first half is basically reflects the first half of the book, but it picks up exactly where it's supposed to pick up. And it's just like, yeah, definitely worthwhile. I heard the actor, Tom Blythe, I think his name is, was really, really, really good, especially the part after Sejanus' death and like with Lucy at the end. The way he portrayed that was like no monologue, it's just emotion for like 5-6 minutes. Was really, 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 really good. It's exactly how I pictured it whilst reading it. So really, really, really good. I'm really happy. It feels very completed. Now you know how the villain became the bad guy, how he wasn't always like that, how he was just trying to survive and trying to keep the family's name. Really all about status, really, when you think about it, in the expense of other people's lives, unfortunately, which was quite horrible. But yeah, Lucy was just trying to survive. So I like the references to Katniss as well. I found that so funny. Oh, the guy who plays Flickerman was so good. Lucky Flickerman. I loved him so much. My favorite character in the whole film, I think. And I loved Caesar Flickerman too. Celia Tucci, who played him in the Hunger Games series, was really, really good job at that too. So Lucky Flickerman was absolutely such a treat. There was little like things here and there that weren't in the book. That's just the character itself saying it. The actor who was just like, I forgot the word for it, where they just kind of add ad-libs or something, where they just add extra things. I loved it. It was so good. It was really funny. I loved his character so much. He was kind of like the Haymitch of the whole movie when you think about it. It was really great. And I love that made him an amateur magician. That was really good as well. That was so unexpected, but it basically lifted the film up a little bit, which was really awesome. Yeah, that was pretty much it. Like, it was such a good film. Definitely 10 out of 10. It kind of reprises the whole Hunger Games franchise, and it really brought my like inner teen back, because I was a teenager when I watched the first franchise. So it's like, oh my god, this is really cool. Like to see again, like a bit older, obviously with different perspective on things, and because of the Hunger Games, you know. So yeah, this whole like franchise will forever be in my heart, and will like forever be one of my absolute favorite novels in the entire world, just because of how it reflects things and characters and real life. And yeah, really, 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 really good. Definitely worth it. When I watch it again, probably at some point in the future, because it is really long, it does kind of sit with you. You don't forget stuff at all. It's really like a stick with you kind of film. Or like it on DVD. Definitely, it's definitely worth it. It's definitely going to part of my collection, that's for sure. But yeah, definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. But bees, like, try to focus, be patient, have snacks, toilet break. It's a 3-hour movie. It's really damn long, but it's definitely worth it. Like, it paces itself out really well. And after about like a couple of minutes, like an hour maybe, or half an hour, it doesn't even feel like 3 hours. It feels very quick. Like, a lot happens. So, but not in like a rushing way. So yeah, that's my review of the Hunger Games movie, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It was really good. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up if you like this kind of content. If you want to see more of my YouTube review type things, I've got like it everywhere. I've reviewed a couple of movies. Let me know what you thought down below about the new movie. Like, how'd you see it? How'd you perceive it? Favorite parts, worst parts? Was it close to the book? Did you see it the same way that you saw it whilst you were reading? Yeah, I'd love to hear it. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.
Are you coming to the tree?